now that we have our player functioning and we can go ahead and fire out, how do I make it so that we can't do what I'm doing here, where I'm spamming our laser shots? So how can we get rid of that? This is where we introduce what's known as a cooldown system. A cooldown system, if you think of your favorite Call of Duty game, right? You have burst rates, and you can't just hold down the fire button. You can, but bullets will only fly out every X amount of seconds. So that's what we want to do. We want to limit the amount of bullets you can create, and we want to create a sort of fire rate for our character. So say every 0.25 seconds, I want you to be able to fire, which will allow us to create a power-up later in our game where you can mass fire just by maybe holding down the space key or left clicking. Now, you may be wondering, how am I getting this effect here when I fire? And the way you get that is because I'm using the left clicking to fire. Now, I didn't show how to do that because I expect you to be able to research and figure out how to also incorporate the space button as well as using your mouse to click. Now, I will show you the code for that, but basically what you could have done is just how do you get the mouse click in Unity? And just to show you that, how to get mouse click in Unity, input.get mouse button down. That's exactly what we're looking for here. And as you can see here, how do I left click? Simple. If input.get mouse button down 0 for left click, 1 for right click, and 2 for the middle click, which is your scroll wheel. So, and if we look at my code for that, you can go ahead and see here that in my fire method, all I've done is I check for the space key, and these two brackets here, these standing tall braces, are an OR statement. So I'm checking if I hit the space key or if I hit the left mouse button. And if I do either of those, this condition is true, and I instantiate my laser. So what I want to do is I want to create a cooldown system. When creating a cooldown system, we're going to think about what is required to do so. So for instance, when you think of a cooldown system in like your favorite game, Call of Duty, what is required, right? First off, we have a fire rate. So what is our fire rate for our player? It's going to be a variable. So we have a fire rate of, say, 0.2 seconds. So fire rate is 0.25 seconds. Now what we need to do is how do we actually implement the cooldown system? How do we know that once you've fired, 0.25 seconds has passed so that you can fire again? We need a variable that we can check time against. So we'll have a variable here called canFire. And this variable is specifically used to compare has 0.25 seconds passed. So has the amount of time between firing passed. Now that leads to a question. How do I know how much time has passed? And that's where we introduce something called time.time. Time.time is how long the game has been running. And I'm going to go ahead and show you the scripting reference for time.time because they actually demonstrate a cooldown system for us. Head on over to the scripting reference and go ahead and type in time.time. And you'll see here the time at the beginning of this frame. This is the time in seconds since the start of the game. Now what that means is that as soon as you hit the play button, time.time is 0. 60 seconds into the game, so 1 minute into your game, time.time is 60. 3 minutes into the game, time.time is 180, and so forth. So 5 minutes into the game, time.time is 300. We're going to use this variable of how long the game has been running to compare how long since our last fire. Now check out the time.time description here. So it's the time since the game has started, and then look at their example here. They actually provide us with an example of a fire rate cooldown system. So check it out. Similar to us, we have a fire rate of 0.25 seconds for us. We have a next fire variable, which is a float, and it's set to 0. And what they're doing here is if get button fire, so they're using the input manager, so if they hit the left mouse button down, and time.time, which is how long the game has been running, is greater than next fire, which is 0. All right, it's a true condition because time.time, say the game's been running for 60 seconds and next fire is 0. Is 60 greater than 0? Yes, we're in a true condition. Now we're here. 0, which is next fire, now gets reassigned to the current time, which is 60, plus your fire rate, which would be 0.5, which means that for 0.5 seconds, this condition is no longer true, and thus you cannot fire. So let's go ahead and incorporate this into ours. So here we have a fire rate of 0.25 seconds. Because we're working with a float value, we need a float variable. So here we'll go ahead and say public float fire rate equals 0.25f. Also, we have our can fire. So public float can fire, or you can think of it as your next fire, equals 0.0f. Okay, so we got those two variables in. Now we need to make use of time.time. So here's where we actually check if we left click. We can create another if statement inside of here to check if enough time has passed. So the way we do that is we're just checking to see if time since the game has started, so time.time, is greater than can fire. And if that's the case, then what we're going to do is we're going to instantiate. Now, after instantiating, what we want to do is we need to reassign the value of can fire so that this condition is no longer true for however long our fire rate is. So we say can fire, which has a value of 0 at the start, equals how long the game has been running, which is time.time, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to add our fire rate. This is going to make it so that this condition is no longer true for a minimum of 0.25 seconds. Save this, and if we test it out, you'll notice that our player can no longer spam the fire button. You'll see here, I'm restrained to 0.25 seconds. Okay, now this is probably one of the most challenging things we're actually going to be working on throughout the first course here. So don't worry if you're a little stuck here. Try and go back over the material and really try to understand what's happening here. And like I said, if you don't understand it, it's okay. With practice and experience, you'll get better and better. And like I said, this is probably the most advanced thing we're going to be doing in this game alone. Alrighty, I'll see you guys in the next video.